We are just wrapping up day one from Forrester B2B Summit. My name is Jim Kohl. I'm Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Fathom, and I am here with Jeremy Mathis. Jeremy, you are an account partner at Fathom. Why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about your role and how you interact with clients on a daily basis?
Yep, absolutely. As an account partner here, my role is really to interface with key executives and on our client teams, and really making sure that the efforts that we're putting forward from a marketing perspective are aligning with the overall business objectives of our clients. So I work a lot with our executives on the client side, as well as our client teams, to make sure that we're providing the most impactful outcomes for our partners.
Today was day one. We have 4 days ahead of us this week of Forrester B2B Summit. And I've had a lot of Forrester experience professionally in my career, but this is a new one because this is Serious Decisions. Now, Forrester acquired Serious Decisions, so this is sort of year one of Serious Decisions in new clothes, if you will. And I just want to have a quick conversation about what did you experience, what did we expect, and what are we looking forward to as we go into the next few days. Let's start with this. We both started with the keynote. Carrie Cunningham and Steve Silver, both analysts and research directors with Forrester, gave us the keynote, and the topic was this: the optimal path to revenue, a new vision for working together. And one of the things that they primarily presented was a new view of the demand unit waterfall. Now, this is the Serious Decisions version of sort of the buying funnel or the sales process that they use in a lot of their research. And what they did is they sort of revamped it, re-engineered it, rebranded it. It is now known as the Forrester B2B Revenue Waterfall. And what were some of your takeaways from that keynote on this new revenue waterfall?
Jim, you and I were joking previously about how, it started with a simple 5-step model and blew it out to something that now has 32 steps. But I feel like the additions really added a lot to the overall model. The biggest takeaway for me was the inclusion of existing customers in that. So taking a look at not only acquisition as a key point, but also upsells, retention and cross-sell opportunities, and how those have their own conversion points throughout the waterfall funnel. I thought that really added a new dimension. And honestly, it's something that I think we see a lot of as digital marketers here within B2B, but also across other spaces as well, where people tend to get focused on net new acquisition, and they forget about that whole other half of the coin where there's a lot of revenue at play.
So they actually talked about, with sort of this addition of new facets of the waterfall or new opportunity types, there could be potentially for your business a maximum of 11 total opportunity types. Do you think that's overkill, or do you think that's helpful?
I think it depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, I tend to look at these things not as gospel, as this is the only way to look at it. I tend to see it as more directional in nature. And again, for me, understanding that, really the way to do this is to open up people's eyes to the fact that we need to start thinking about existing customers in the same way that we are approaching net new acquisition, I think is a great way to do it. The stat that jumped out at me, 1 lost retention opportunity, I think they equated to 6 upsell opportunities and something like 16 cross-sell and 30 new ops, right? So if you think about that and you think about the opportunity to really focus in on, I have a relationship with my existing customer base. How do I not only keep them, but expand, cross-sell the new opportunities? That's a huge piece for your business.
Yeah, I think one of the other major improvements, or at least adjustments that they made to the waterfall, is that they're moving it beyond that of just a process. So the waterfall, as most would look at it, is a funnel with a wide funnel at the top and a narrow funnel at the bottom in terms of moving prospects through opportunity to different points of conversion to the point of revenue generation. I'm sure they would not approve of me calling their waterfall a funnel, but that's essentially what it is. So they moved away from just the waterfall view of being a process, but they translated it actually into a bar chart. I think they went a little overkill. They turned like an 8-step process into like a 32-segment map that now takes the form of a bar chart. But here's where I do think there's value. If you can sort of manipulate that new B2B revenue waterfall for your business and identify those opportunity types you were talking about that make sense for your particular model, you can now represent your business performance down the funnel or down the waterfall using that bar chart. So I think that's actually a really helpful improvement that I did find interesting. I'd like to see it put in action to see what it actually looks like for someone who's operating a business. All right, so following the keynote, you and I went different directions. I went to a session on trends among B2B buyers over the last few years. That was interesting, some interesting stats. Let's hear which direction you went and what did you find interesting?
Yeah, absolutely. I attended a session called 5-Step Playbook for Data Storytelling That Drives Decision Making. It was run by Cindy Little. And it was a really, really interesting session. I think this is a challenge that all of us as marketers have, really understanding, okay, how do I tell a story with all the vast amounts of data and numbers that I'm seeing in front of me? And I think one of the interesting points that she made was, a lot of times analysts, and I would lump digital marketers or really any marketers into that bucket as well, we tend to think that the data is going to speak for itself, right? And we'll put that out there and we'll assume that people are going to read that data or interpret the data the same way that we are, when in fact we know that that's just not the case, right? Everyone has a different perspective. Everyone's going to see things from their own point of view, and that is going to warp or change what they think that data might mean. And so she had a great quote up front, and it was, really looking at, what we need to do, what's missing is to bridge the data to that emotional engagement that drives decisions. And I thought that was a real interesting way to look at it. Even though we're talking B2B, we're talking business decisions, there's still a key role for the emotional side of things to help drive the decision, the action that you're looking for your audience to take.
In my session, some trends among B2B buyers that were not so surprising. They looked over the past couple of years and, of course, had some observations about the impact of the pandemic. Number one, I thought was interesting. In 2019 versus 2021, the average B2B buyer required 17 versus 27. So moving from 17 interactions up to 27 interactions required to actually close one particular type of sale. So more interactions required in order to sort of communicate effectively and move a buyer down the funnel. Interestingly enough, this is a little bit broader of a time period from 2015 to 2021, so a period of 6 years almost. The purchase time frame that is 4 months or longer for a B2B buyer, 19 versus now 32% of B2B buyers in 2021 are sort of among that segment. So some takeaways maybe aren't so surprising that, number one, it takes more information and more interactions to close a deal. And there also is now a higher proportion of B2B buyers that are taking longer to do so. So it's harder, requires more effort, takes longer. The main differences are in verticals by organization size. So they looked at SMB versus mid-market versus enterprise. Probably no surprise to anyone. SMB in particular, but even mid-market, really the focus for B2B buyers, for marketers in the last year was just running my business and trying to keep my head above water. So we've seen a bit of that among our client base here at Fathom, so that's not a surprise, and that's a real challenge when you're going through it. All right, last up, outside of networking opportunities and things of the like, there was sort of what is now very central to the anatomy of any big event like this, and that is the celebrity showcase or keynote that comes on one or more days. Today was Trevor Noah of The Daily Show. And full transparency for me, I did not intend to attend this session, but I ended up throwing it on and consuming the content. And I will admit, I'm interested to see if it's the same for you, I found it compelling.
I had a very similar takeaway, yeah, and I will fully admit I'm not. I don't watch The Daily Show. I've seen the clips on YouTube. I think he's very funny, but I'm not. I wouldn't consider myself a Trevor Noah fan or somebody who watches the show religiously. But I thought there were a lot of really good things that he said, and just his perspective and the way that he described not only his upbringing and how he got into the business, but how he looks at the world, I think was very, very applicable to a lot of different things. One that he actually actively seeks out people that have different experiences. And I think he put it experiences that I can't have, so that he can see the world from a different point of view. And I thought that was a really compelling way to think about things. How do you make yourself better, not only by aligning or not by aligning with people who have a similar point of view, but that's going to contrast your style, your vision, in order to make yourself a little bit better. The second one that I jotted down was that he, on his show, when he's looking at putting together segments, he asks people to challenge his way of thinking. All right, am I off on this? This is the way that I'm seeing it. And I think that was great. Again, for him, he said, look, it's either going to change my mind, on my perspective on it, or it's going to sharpen it. And either way, that's a good thing. Either way, we're evolving as human beings. I thought those two things especially were just really good pieces of feedback.
Yeah, I found his insights on collaboration, on innovation, on culture within a team and a company to be actually quite on point. And so I found it to be much more an introspective and insightful conversation and perspective from Trevor. So that was interesting. One thing that we'll sort of wrap it up with here is he did sort of liken comedy to mining. And he talked about that with comedy, a lot of the work is similar to or is parallel with just moving dirt, moving earth to get to sort of the gem or the diamond that lies underneath. And there is a real parallel, I find, to the work that we do with our own business and with our clients many times. It can feel, though, at times that we are just moving tons and tons and tons of dirt in the activity that we're doing. And it's important not to lose sight that is the nature many times of the work that's required of us in order to get to the gem or get to the value. And I think really where we can get better is how do we move more dirt more efficiently, or how do we move less dirt in a more targeted way to get where we're trying to go? So I thought that was an interesting insight that played well for me.
Yeah, totally agree. I thought that was a great way to look at it, and I loved that analogy of, again, it doesn't matter how much dirt you move, you're looking for that one gem. So I think your thinking there, Jim, is dead on. Of is it how do we move dirt differently, or how do we move less dirt in order to have more of a capacity to find those gems? I think there's a lot to that we can apply in our lives here.
Okay, so this was day one from Forrester B2B Summit. This is a virtual event. So Jeremy, you and I are sitting in Cleveland, Ohio. We have 3 more days. What is one of the biggest surprises, or what is a big area of anticipation as we look for the rest of the week?
I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical coming in. I've been to a number of conferences in person, and I think there's, while there's always some sessions that maybe fall short, the energy, the vibe, the meeting people in person and hearing and learning new things, you always leave energized. There's a lot to that. So I wasn't sure how they were going to apply that in a virtual setting. I think the interface, they tried really hard to make it look like a virtual conference and all that. But I was pleasantly surprised with the how it was structured so far. I guess looking forward to it, I didn't have a lot of chance to do networking today. I was really more focused on some of the sessions that they had. Curious to get some conversations with other attendees and hear what they're seeing, what's happening. And again, I think the biggest curiosity for me is we've all been through a very, hopefully once in a lifetime, thing that happened over this last 14 months. I really want to hear from other people. How did this affect your business? What are you doing looking forward? I think that is, the biggest thing that's on everyone's mind is, not only how we reacted to the pandemic, but how we move forward and move forward faster than the competition. So I'm really curious to get some perspective there.
Okay, that's day one. We'll see you the rest of the week.